Long, long ago, deep in a quiet forest, there stood an old mill. And in places like this, where everything is calm and still, truly magical things sometimes happen. What do you think, my friends? Can ordinary straw really turn into gold? Come with me into a story. Tonight I'll tell you about a very strange little gnome. Deep in the forest lived a miller with his daughter. The girl was clever, kind, and had a good heart. The miller loved her very much, but he was so proud of her that he sometimes forgot to be careful with his words. One day, a king came riding into the forest on a hunt, and the miller, eager to impress him, said proudly, "My daughter is so clever that she can spin gold from straw." The king stopped and smiled in surprise. He liked gold very much. "If that's true," he said, "I'd like to see her." And so the young girl was taken to the royal castle. She didn't yet know that a great trial awaited her. The king led her into a tall chamber. Straw lay scattered all around, and in the middle of the room stood an old spinning wheel. "By morning you must spin this straw into gold," the king said in a firm voice. "Only then you will prove that your father's words were true." Then the doors were closed and silence filled the chamber. The young girl was left all alone. She sat down by the wall, and quiet tears ran down her cheeks, for she knew that no one in the whole world could do such a thing. "I can't do it," the girl sobbed softly. "Father was only boasting." After a moment, the door slowly creaked open, and a little gnome slipped quietly into the room. "Good evening, young girl," he said with a kind smile. "Why are you crying?" "I must spin this straw into gold, and I don't know how," she said sadly, looking at the spinning wheel. The gnome thought for a while and then said, "Very well, I'll help you, but what'll you give me in return?" The young girl looked at her necklace and slowly took it off. "Take my necklace," she said softly. "Agreed." The gnome smiled and got to work. He sat down at a spinning wheel, began to sing, and the wheel started to spin. Little wheel, spin around. Straw turns gold without any sound. Spin and spin, the night is near. Golden thread is floating here. By morning, all the straw had turned into shining gold. The king was delighted, his eyes sparkling, but he still longed for even more gold. "Excellent," he said, "but tonight you'll spin even more." Once again, he locked the young girl in a room. This time with a huge pile of straw that reached all the way to the ceiling. The girl helplessly buried her face in her hands and quietly sobbed. And before long, the gnome appeared again, just as before. "What'll you give me this time?" he asked mysteriously, looking at her with a mischievous glance. The girl thought for a moment and then took off her ring. "This is all I have," she said softly. The gnome smiled, sat down at the spinning wheel, and once again a quiet sound was heard. Little wheel, spin around. Straw turns gold without any sound. Spin and spin, the night is near. Golden thread is floating here. And suddenly, all the straw in the room turned into gleaming gold. On the third day, the king led the girl into a vast high chamber filled with straw. "If you can spin even this enormous pile into gold," the king said seriously, "you shall become my wife." The girl was left alone in the chamber, staring at a huge heap of straw. Then the gnome appeared once more, his little eyes shining brightly. "What'll you give me this time?" he asked mysteriously. The girl whispered in despair, "I have nothing left." The gnome smiled slyly and said, "If you become queen, you'll give me your firstborn child." The girl was frightened, but in her heart she thought that she was only a simple girl and that the king would surely never take her as his wife. And since she had nothing else to give the gnome, she nodded silently. Once again, the gnome set to work. Little wheel, spin around. Straw turns gold without any sound. Spin and spin, the night is near. Golden thread is floating here. The wheel spun, and by morning all the straw had turned into gold. When the king entered the vast chamber in the morning, he could hardly believe his own eyes. Everywhere he looked, gold was gleaming. He kept his promise and took the girl as his wife. And so an ordinary girl became a queen. Years passed, and peace and joy reigned throughout the kingdom. The queen had everything she had ever wished for, and little by little she forgot the promise she'd once made to the gnome. Time went on, and her first child was born. Then, one day, the gnome returned. "I've come to claim what's mine," said the gnome, his eyes glowing. The queen burst into tears. "Take all the gold in the kingdom," she cried. "Just leave me my child." The gnome thought for a moment and then said, "I'll give you 3 days. If during that time you can guess my name, the child shall stay with you." The young queen sent messengers throughout the entire kingdom to search for every name that existed. It was to bring back new ideas that might reveal the gnome's secret. On the 3rd day, one of the messengers returned and excitedly announced, "Your Majesty, I saw a gnome in the forest. He was dancing around a fire and singing." Little queen, my name you'll never find. I keep it hidden, secret in my mind. Guess, guess, little queen, try once again. If you get it right, your child you will gain. My name is Rumpelstiltskin. The next day, when the gnome appeared in the castle, the queen smiled and said, Your name is Rumpelstiltskin. The gnome frowned, jumped up and shouted, Who told you that? In anger, he stomped his foot on the ground, muttered something under his breath and turned away. Then he walked quickly back into the forest, and no one ever saw him again. And in that moment, everyone realized that gold and magic do not truly make people happy. The greatest treasure is family and the people we love. With love, your Panda Millie.